Real-Time 1960s presents Evening Report, a complete roundup of today's news with Joe Rubenstein.
Good evening. In Washington, President Kennedy explains a derogatory statement. In Los Angeles, black Muslims clash with police. In Kansas City, Vice President Johnson honors Harry Truman. Secretary McNamara goes to South Vietnam. Stanley Kubrick plans an explosive new film. And the Bronx bombers are heating up. Those are the headlines. The details after this message.
The gentle sounds of springtime seem to say relax and be refreshed. And just as gently, Salem brings you springtime refreshment. For Salem special paper, air softens every puff, breathes in fresh, cool air to bring you a softer smoke. Take a puff. It's springtime. Most delightfully, Salem refreshes your taste.
At his press conference today, President Kennedy denied making a harsh statement about all businessmen. The president's alleged statement, first printed in the New York Times on April 23rd, has inspired a good deal of editorial comment about Mr. Kennedy's supposed hostility toward American business. Some Democrats are concerned this perception may impact their fortunes in the fall elections. President Kennedy, during his conflict with the steel industry last month, allegedly said, quote, "My father always told me that all businessmen were sons of bitches, but I never believed it till now," unquote.
You were quoted as making a rather harsh statement about businessmen. I'm sure you know which statement I have in mind.
Yes. You wouldn't want to identify it, would you? Yeah.
Talk about it, Mr. President.
Would I want to comment on it?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, well, the statement which I've seen repeated as it was repeated in one daily paper is inaccurate. It quotes my father as having expressed himself strongly to me, and I quoted what he said and indicated that he had not been, as he had not been on many other occasions, wholly wrong. The only thing wrong with the statement was that as it appeared in a daily paper, it indicated that he was critical of, I think the phrase was all businessmen. That's obviously an error because he was a businessman himself. He was critical of the steel men. He'd worked for a steel company himself. He was involved when he was a member of the Roosevelt administration in the 37 strike. He formed an opinion which he imparted to me and which I found appropriate that evening. But he confined it, and I would confine it. But I felt at that time that we had not been treated altogether with frankness, and therefore I thought that his view had merit. But that's past. Now we're working together, I hope. Yeah.
In Los Angeles today, Mayor Sam Yorty described the racial climate in that city as tense. This appraisal was made 12 days after a deadly riot erupted between black Muslims and police, first outside then inside Nation of Islam Temple 27 in south central Los Angeles. One Muslim, Ronald Stokes, was shot to death and 6 others were wounded. Police casualties included Officer Frank Tomlinson, whose elbow was shattered by gunfire, Officer Richard Anderson, struck on the head with a 5-gallon water jug, and Officer Stanley Kensick, knocked to the ground, beaten, and kicked in the head. The origin of the riot is disputed. Police say the violence erupted after Officers Tomlinson and Kensick had stopped to question Monroe X. Jones, who was selling clothing out of his car to another Muslim, Fred X. Jingles, near the temple. Police said the officers were jumped and beaten while questioning the men, and that during the melee, Mr. Jones pulled Officer Kensick's gun from its holster and shot Officer Tomlinson with it. The Muslims charged that Officer Kensick twisted Mr. Jingles' arm behind his back without cause, and that police reinforcements called to the scene had invaded their temple and engaged in quote-unquote Gestapo tactics. It took 75 officers to subdue the riot, which William H. Parker, Los Angeles police chief since 1950, called, quote, "the most brutal conflict I've seen since I've been here," unquote. 17 Muslims were arraigned on charges of assault with intent to commit great bodily harm. They were all freed on bail of $10,500 each, pending a preliminary hearing May 24th. In addition, a grand jury has been called to investigate the riot. On Friday, Malcolm X, national spokesman for the black Muslims, excoriated Chief Parker at a press conference in Los Angeles.
How could this brutal crime against innocent, unarmed human beings occur in America with no public outcry by the well-thinking Americans? It is because Police Chief William H. Parker spread false propaganda in order to camouflage the true facts in one of the most savage atrocities ever inflicted upon unarmed, innocent human beings in a so-called civilized society. And simply because Chief William H. Parker's well-armed stormtroopers wore police uniforms doesn't make the criminal actions of the policemen any more right than the uniforms worn by Hitler and his uniformed Gestapo police who shot down the innocent Jews in Nazi Germany.
Today, Mayor Yorty told his press conference that at least half the black Muslims in Los Angeles had criminal records, and that he was 100% behind Chief Parker. He called brutality charges wild and exaggerated, adding that those who make such charges, quote, want to make it seem the police are the ones who attack the person, when exactly the opposite is true. Anytime you get a group which preaches hatred, you are apt to have trouble, and the Muslims preach hatred. This group can set race relations in our community back 10 years. They probably have already, unquote. Over the weekend, Malcolm X remained in Los Angeles to speak at Mr. Stokes' funeral at Temple 27.
The person whom you have come to know as Ronald Stokes, we know him as Brother Ronald. Everyone who knew him had to give him credit for being a good man, a clean man, an intelligent man, and an innocent man when he was murdered.
He singled out Mayor Yorty for criticism.
And as far as your mayor is concerned, I should say their mayor, a professional liar, put it in the paper that they broke into our religious place of worship and got records that they can use to prove that most of us have criminal records. Martin Luther King has been to jail. Please, why you can't name a black man in this country who is sick and tired of the hell that he's catching who hasn't been to jail. To have once been a criminal is no disgrace. To remain a criminal is the disgrace. I formerly was a criminal. I formerly was in prison. I'm not ashamed of that. You never can use that over my head. And that he's using the wrong stick. I don't feel that stick. I went to prison because I believed in men like Sam Yorty. I went to prison because I trusted men like Sam Yorty. I went to prison following the philosophy of men like Sam Yorty. But since I've been following the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I have been reformed, and that's more, please. That's more than Sam Yorty and Chief Parker and all these other white politicians have been able to do with the inmates in the prisons of this state.
Finally, after vilifying his white critics as hypocritical, Mr. X issued a veiled warning.
The white man is tricking you. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in South Vietnam. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in Berlin. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he didn't say get nonviolent. He said, praise the Lord, but pass the ammunition. But when someone attacks you, when someone comes at you with a club, when someone comes at you with a rope, when someone comes at you with a gun, despite the fact that you've done nothing, he tells you, suffer peacefully. And how long can you suffer after suffering for 400 years? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromise and sweet talk, why, you're the one that make it hard for yourself. The white man believes you when you go to him with that old sweet talk because you've been sweet talking him ever since he brought you here. Stop sweet talking him. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.
In Saigon today, Defense Secretary Robert McNamara said the U.S. had no plans to send combat troops to South Vietnam, despite recent communist gains in that country and in neighboring Laos. As part of his visit, Mr. McNamara toured a new settlement at Ben Tung, 40 miles north of Saigon. The settlement is part of Operation Sunrise, which seeks to separate the peasant population from the Viet Cong, thus depriving the communists of recruits, supplies, and intelligence. The operation involves rounding up and resettling hundreds of families, often against their will. After the families are removed, government forces burn their former dwellings to prevent their use by the communists. The U.S. has made funds available to compensate the resettled families, and the practitioners of Operation Sunrise are providing them with services previously unavailable: schools, medicine, and security from the communists. I'll have more news for you after this message.
Boy, summer eating's great as all outdoors with French's barbecue sauce. The sauce with more sass. French's sassier spices blended with red ripe tomatoes for just the right bite. Chicken never tasted like this before. Like a little more French's? Tastes great right from the bottle, too. French's barbecue sauce.
Here again, Joe Rubenstein.
At the president's press conference today, a reporter noted rumors in Texas and elsewhere that Vice President Johnson might be dropped from the Democratic ticket in 1964. Mr. Kennedy was asked if he had any reason to believe that either end of the ticket would be different 2 years from now.
Well, I don't know about what they will do with me, but I'm sure that the vice president will be on the ticket if he chooses to run. We were fortunate to have him before, would again. I don't know where such a rumor could start. He's invaluable. He fulfills a great many responsibilities as vice president. He participates in all of the major deliberations. He's been in the Congress for years. He's invaluable. So, of course, he will be if he chooses to be part of the ticket.
Sources close to Vice President Johnson say he maintains the hope of becoming the Democratic presidential nominee in 1968. In light of the fact that he will need President Kennedy's support to make that happen, Mr. Johnson has been very careful to say or do nothing that may offend the president. He has said on more than one occasion, quote, "I am as close to the president as he wants me to be, and no closer than the president wants me to be," unquote. Yesterday, the vice president was in Kansas City to help celebrate former President Harry S. Truman's 78th birthday.
We missed your leadership in Washington for a long time, but I guess you've earned the right to come home and spend some time with your friends and your family. We all hope you'll be visiting us back east a lot more often. We have a man in the White House today who speaks your language, Mr. President, who has a mental sign on his desk that says what you have said so often, the buck stops here. And who knows that a leader has to dig his spurs into some sensitive places from time to time.
Stanley Kubrick, whose film version of the controversial novel Lolita opens next month, is already hard at work on another explosive screen subject, nuclear war. Last week, the 33-year-old director made his first public statement about the unusually titled Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. The film, conceived during the Berlin crisis last year, takes a satirical approach to its grim topic. Mr. Kubrick said he chose that approach because of what he called the stupefying reverence with which the topic has been treated thus far. Mr. Kubrick added, quote, "There is almost total preoccupation with a technical solution to the problem of the bomb. Our theme is that there is no technical solution. The arms race is not likely to produce an everlasting peace. And on the other hand, even a perfectly inspected disarmament program, if not accompanied by a profound moral change in nations and men, would lead to quick rearmament and war. The only solution lies in the hearts and minds of men," unquote. Dr. Strangelove is set to begin production in Great Britain early next year. Sports, right after this.
This is Boris Karloff. No one can guarantee the survival of every home during a nuclear war, but a strong civil defense can save millions of lives. Make sure that yours is one of them. Learn how to protect your home. Call Civil Defense today.
In a grim development for the rest of the American League, the M&M boys, Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle, are starting to find their range. This fact was painfully apparent to the Senators Sunday night as the Yankees thrashed the Washingtonians 8-0 at Yankee Stadium. To add insult to injury, the pitcher who authored the Bombers' first shutout of the year was a rookie, 23-year-old right-hander Jim Bouton from Englewood, New Jersey. In the bottom of the first, the Yankees commenced a thorough working over of Senators lefty Pete Burnside. After a double from second baseman Bobby Richardson, Roger Maris came to bat.
Pete Burnside to the stretch. And the pitch to Rod. Swung on. There's a high drive to deep right field. That ball is going, it is gone. Richardson scores, and Roger Maris comes home with his fifth home run of the year.
And just moments later, Mickey Mantle gave the crowd of 24,000 more to shout about.
Batting right-handed now against Burnside. They pitch to Mick. Swung on. There's a drive to deep right field. It is going, it is gone. Back-to-back, M&M.
The Yankees resumed their assault in the seventh, this time victimizing rookie right-hander Jim Hannon. After shortstop Tom Tresh singled in 2 runs, Maris worked a walk, and Mantle slammed his second homer of the day, this time batting from the left side. It was the 9th time in his career that Mantle homered from both sides of the plate in the same game, an ongoing Major League record. Despite the fact that Bouton's only appearance prior to this game was a 3-inning relief stint, his route-going performance earned him the 4th spot in the Yankee rotation behind Whitey Ford, Bill Stafford, and Ralph Terry. The Bombers have now won 9 of 11 and sit comfortably in their accustomed perch at the top of the American League standings. In the National League, the Giants lead the Cardinals by 3 games and the Dodgers by 4. And that, for this evening, completes our look at the latest news on this Wednesday, May 9th, 1962. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day tomorrow.
This has been your Evening Report, a roundup of the latest news with Joe Rubenstein.